What's up, everybody? Welcome back. In this section today, we are going to be talking about how search engines work. All right. The reason why we're talking about search engines work is because that's the key to SEO. Once you know how search engines work, you can then use those same principles on multiple websites. Like I said, our daily lives are dominated by the use of search engines, right? So no matter if you're going to Google, if you're going to Amazon, if you're going to Bing, or if you're shopping online, it doesn't matter. You're using the search engine all the time. I don't care if you're on Instagram, Pinterest, etc. It's all search engine optimization. So if you happen to have a brand or anything that you're selling, you have to know how search engines work in order for you to be successful. And that's what I'm going to show you here today. Okay. So we're going to talk about crawling, we're going to talk about indexing, and we're going to talk about ranking, right? That's all search engines do, and I'm going to discuss that in detail with you today. All right. So there are three primary functions of search engines. They crawl, they index, and they rank, right? Crawling means that they scan your website, they scan the internet for content. I don't care if it's pictures, videos, text, especially text. They're looking at all this stuff, and they're scanning your entire website. They're looking at the code. They're looking at all the people that link back to you. They're crawling your entire website. They send out what's called spiders onto your website to crawl through your website like spiders to find all the content on your website for further evaluation, right? The next thing they do right after they crawl your website is they index all of your website pages into a database based on what they found, right? So once they're in the index, a page has a chance to be displayed as an organic search result on the search engine results pages, right? Just like, the results that you find as soon as you type in whatever you're looking for on Google. That is what they're discussing here, right? The next thing that they do is they look at what's in the database and then they rank it. So everything that they scanned and have stored into this database, they then rank it based on the quality of the links that they have in this little bunch here. So of course they want to display the best content that will best answer a user's query, ordered from the most relevant to the least relevant, right? So what Google does is that they have 100 positions available. They have an occupancy max of 100, right? Like I was saying before in the other section, Google's like an exclusive club, right? They only going to let 100 people in, but only 10 people get VIP. That's the front page. They got 10 other pages where where all the other 90 results are that nobody wants to look at, right? So even when you search, let's say, barber, I like the barbershop analogy because always thinking about going to the barbershop. Barbershop Atlanta, right? If I'm searching for a barbershop in Atlanta, Google has stored in their index about 100 different search results. So each organic result is 10 on each page. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? And then they have the maps results, and then they have the ads and all the other stuff, right? So there's 10 on each page. There's 10 pages. Do the math. 10 times 10 is 100. So Google is a club that's only letting 100 people in. But, at the end of the day, only 10 people get VIP. Only 10 people get that front page, right? And I'm going to show you exactly how to be a website that deserves to be in VIP, that deserves to be on the front page. Okay? Great. So moving on, right? So that's what search engines do. They crawl your website, they index it into a database, and then they rank it based on different factors on your website, right? I'm going to show you what those ranking factors are. So into a bit more detail, crawling is what happens when search engines send out a team of robots called spiders to find new and updated content. Content varies. It could be an image, video, or a blog article. Either way, content is discovered by links. Okay, that's the only way they find your website is by going through links. Okay, remember that because that's going to be important for our next discussion. The index is a database where URLs are stored. This is where all your websites pages are stored into these big ass servers. Excuse my language. And this is a good place to be because that means these URLs were deemed good enough to serve users. So they've indexed it and then they're holding on to it. And not everybody gets indexed, and that it is what it is. Like I said, Google is an exclusive club, and they're only letting the best websites inside the club, and only the best websites out of the best websites get to go on VIP, which is the first page. Okay, so that's how it is with the indexing. That they'll let you in, but it doesn't mean you get the exposure that you need. Ranking is where a URL shows up when users search. So if you show up on the first 10 pages, that means you're ranked, right? Now, of course, you could be ranked at the very bottom and still not get the attention that you need, but overall, you're ranked. So, that's the next step of getting there. Then you got to work on getting through the 100, right? Ranking is where a URL shows up when users search. There are 100 positions available, divided into 10 pages. That's why you don't see more than 10 pages whenever you're on search results. Go ahead and try it on your own when you're ready. Crawling. Let's talk about crawling a little bit more. Let's go in a little bit of detail because understanding how crawling works will really help you be successful in SEO. I'm telling you, if you know that they need to access all of your pages in order for your pages to be indexed and then ranked, then you'll know how your pages can be crawled, right? Okay, so let's talk about sitemaps. Sitemaps, they're exactly what they sound like, maps for your site. It's a list of URLs on your site that the crawling spiders use to find and index your pages, right? So typically, what happens with the website is if you don't have a sitemap, they're going to rely on going through your homepage and hoping that they find all the links connected to other pages, like through your menu or through, the links in your footer and stuff like that at the bottom of the page. And so if you don't have a sitemap, the spiders are relying on, the interlinking of your website's pages to make sure that they find everything that they need, right? Then, this becomes more evolved and we start developing sitemaps for websites. That way, the spiders have every URL that they need without, hoping that they find everything by interlinking, right? So you have a sitemap that's provided to these crawl bots in order for them to find all of your website's pages, essentially. It's a sitemap, right? Putting your sitemap in what's called a robots.txt, we'll talk about that in a moment, is a wonderful chemistry of your pages being found or being able to be crawled. For bonus points, you submit this sitemap to Google Search Console. We're going to talk about that in another section. But so that's a pro tip, right? So here's what a sitemap looks like, right? Now, this is a sitemap. This is a WordPress sitemap. It's generated by a WordPress tool called Yoast SEO. I personally prefer WordPress websites over any other kind of website out there for SEO, simply because of this tool here called Yoast SEO, which is everything that you need to be successful to get on the front page. Right now, if you don't have a WordPress website, you can always migrate what you have to a WordPress website. So if you're on BigCommerce, if you're on eCartel or whatever, or I don't know about Shopify, but if you're on Shopify, you should be able to migrate or just take that domain with you to a WordPress website. But overall, if you want to be successful at SEO, you got to get with the number one SEO website, which is WordPress. WordPress is a CMS like all other websites, where it's a content management system that pretty much allows you to manage your website's pages and stuff like that, just like Shopify, but it's called WordPress and it's way better for SEO, right? And so yes, moving on. Anyway, this is a sitemap. This lists pretty much every single link that your website has. So and they're categorized in folders based on them being pages or blog posts or etc. So this specific sitemap has 161 URLs. You can see every single link this category has to offer, right? So you can see all the links. You can click onto them. They'll open up to other pages which are available. And this is what allows the crawlers to find every page that they need, because just by going through this index, you can find all the links that come from this website, right? So you can see that here, all the links right here still. And so this is exactly why this is vital, because all of your pages can be found and crawled. That's the first step, to being, successful at SEO, is all your pages can be crawled, or all the pages that you want to be crawled, right? That kind of leads back into our next topic. Okay, so that's a sitemap, right? Moving on. The next thing I want to talk about is what's called a robots.txt file, right? Robots.txt files are located in the root directory of websites, and tells crawlbots where to crawl, where not to crawl. So the sitemap. So think of it like this: a sitemap is a map of your website, right? And a robots.txt file is a file that tells these crawlbots where to go on the sitemap. You get what I'm saying? So it tells them where not to go, pages not to crawl, and pages to crawl. Now, sometimes there's situations where you don't want certain things to be crawled by these crawlbots because it wastes something called a crawl budget. Crawl budget simply means that spiders aren't going to spend, a ton of time trying to find all the links on your website. They're going to try and find what they're going to find in a short amount of time, and then they're moving on because, of course, they got billions of other websites to crawl, right? So when you're using a robots.txt file, you want to, make sure that these crawlbots are going to all the pages that you want ranked and making sure they're not crawling the pages that you don't want ranked, if that is the case for you. Most small websites don't have to worry about this. As long as your robots.txt file says that it needs, that your entire site needs to be crawled, which I'll show you in a second, then you really don't have to worry about, doing too much editing here with this. I'll show you the very basic setup. So, we'll cover the best general practice for your robots.txt file. Every site differs, therefore not every setup should be the same. However, there are core elements to every robots.txt file that you have to be aware of. This is essentially what's going to allow your website to be crawled effectively, combined with your sitemap. And so let's take a look at this. This is a very basic robots.txt file from this website. And you can see you could just really type, /robots.txt for essentially any website, including Walmart here, which is a little bit more complex, but we don't have to worry about this. But yeah, if you type that in, you'll find any robots.txt file for any website that you land on. So this is the most basic setup for a robots.txt file, and I'm going to quickly go through the elements of what this basic setup is. Like I said, if you're a small website, you don't really have to worry about making this as large as Walmart made theirs. If you're a small website like this one is, this is really all you need. And so the first thing that you need to understand is a user agent. User agent just pretty much means what type of crawlbot these instructions are going to be for. Like I said before, if you're a small website, you don't really have to worry about specifying, what type of directives you want to give to certain crawlers. This star pretty much means all crawlers. Well, not pretty much, it does mean all crawlers. I don't care who you are. These instructions are for you. And then it's saying, here's our sitemap. So when you add the sitemap inside your robots.txt file, it, like I said, makes a perfect chemistry between the crawlers being able to find all the sites, all the links that they need, and also understanding what links they don't need to crawl. So it's a great combination to having a high crawlability, which is another SEO factor for you. All right, so if you have any broken links on your website, if you have links on your website that don't work anymore, you need to redirect those to new pages or to another page on your website, because when it's broken, it doesn't give you any value and the crawlers just ignore it and nothing gets ranked for you. Okay, so the next thing is disallow. This is saying that crawlers are not allowed to crawl pages with links that end with this. So this is WP admin, which is just a WordPress dashboard. It's where you manage everything. You don't want that to be crawled because it doesn't need to be crawled. No one needs to find that. That's a place where you manage your website. So you don't want the search engine to find that because it really doesn't matter, right? The next thing that it says not to crawl is the author, meaning that the author of the blogs don't crawl anything that ends with these links. Again, tag is just a tag that you put out there for your different blog posts and things like that, like a hashtag essentially. And we don't want them to crawl that because we don't want that stuff to be ranked, right? We only want certified pages real content to be ranked by search engines on your website. And then the last part is allow. That pretty much means allow crawling through all the pages on my website, right? So when you combine the allow with the disallow, you're saying, hey, crawl everything except for URLs that end like this or have that in there, okay? So this is a very basic setup. Is essentially saying, hey, all crawlers, check out my sitemap. Don't crawl these pages, but crawl everything else, right? Because it ends in a slash, which pretty much everything has, right? So that's a robots.txt file. It just gives these crawlers directions on what pages to crawl, what pages not to crawl, and also gives them, access to your sitemap, okay? So anytime a crawler is gonna, before a crawler starts to crawl your website, it's gonna check to see if you have a robots.txt file that's available for them to go through, and then they'll find your sitemap through that, and so on and so forth. Then they're crawling every single page on your website, right? Now you're 1/3 of this step of the way to having great, visibility for your website through search engines, because now it's well crawled. Okay, so let's dig a little deeper here. Crawling. The last thing I want to talk about with crawling is when your URLs go bad or you have any errors on your website, like 404 errors or things like that. When crawlers try to access a URL, they issue reports on whether or not they achieved that goal, right? So they go back and tell whoever their crawling boss is that, they weren't able to access this URL. And these are called response codes. It's just simply codes that crawlbots use to communicate what they found with a certain URL on your website. Okay, so a 200 is a success. That means they were able to access it. Great. A 404, file not found. They can't find or locate the page itself. When they try to go to it, nothing happens. It just it's a dead link, right? And then there's a 301 moved permanently. That means that you redirected a old URL to a new URL. So instead of just deleting your page, you've deleted the page and you've redirected that old link to another page on your website. Okay. Now, this is the most effective thing that you can do if you're going to delete pages or remove content on your website or remove URLs overall on your website, right? So if you delete a page, make sure you issue a redirect to another new page. That way, crawlers don't run into any trouble, because the more trouble that they run into, the worse your site looks. Okay, so make sure you're putting those redirects if you're deleting a page. All right, and then there's a 503 service unavailable. Servers unavailable, like if you have a problem with your hosting and they can't access your website, it just says servers unable to handle the request due to temporary overloading or maintenance of the server. So whenever they're doing maintenance of the server, they shut everything down for a bit. And so if they're not able to access it, there's nothing that they can do. Again, crawlers crawl things every single day, every week, every month, every year. So you're not going to miss anything if your site goes down periodically and then it comes back up. Now, if it's down for a day or 2 or 3 days, then you'll lose, your indexing completely, because Google needs to make sure that they're showing available websites on search results all the time, right? Like I said, they only want to show the best. If you're not going to show up, then they're going to kick you out the club and move somebody else in who can deliver better results. Okay, so that's that. So like I said, if your link is accessible, that's a 200, that's good. If it's a 404 page or it can't be found, you got to move that old link to another page or a new page that you created. That way, crawlers don't look at you badly. All right. Okay, so next thing we're going to talk about is indexing. That's the next phase of this entire, SEO process. You go from crawling, where they scan all the websites, links, and then they index these links into a database, and we're going to talk about that now, right? So just because your site can be crawled doesn't mean it will be stored in the index. A lot of people miss out on that. Pages are also sometimes removed from the index. Those reasons could be, the URL returned a 404 error, like I just mentioned before, or a 500 error. This could be by mistake, like if you change the URL and you didn't put a redirect in place. Another reason is because the URL had a no index meta tag, which is, another topic for another time. It's a bit more advanced, but all it's saying is that, you can put a no index meta tag on pages that you don't want to be ranked or crawled by Google. So, this is a tag site owners add instructing search engines to omit the page out of the index. So that's another reason why you could not be indexed. Then you have a URL that has been manually penalized for violating the search engine guidelines, and as a result was removed from the index. Like I mentioned in the previous sections, that if you're doing shady stuff or trying to manipulate the search engine in a way that they don't appreciate, they will penalize you. So you're not going to get away with whatever sneaky stuff they're gonna find out. If you think you've had a link that previously showed up on Google but now no longer comes up, you can use the URL inspection tool to learn more. So URL inspection tool is something that's available on Google Search Console. I'm going to go to Google Search Console and show you exactly what that is in another section, but it's another pro tip that I want to leave out there. Okay, so that's pretty much indexing. You just got to make sure that you're able to get indexed. If you're not able to get indexed, you need to find out why, and take care of that issue. It's not very intensive because as long as you're able to be crawled and you have these factors that get you ranked really well, that's the big cheese, right? So you just got to be able to get indexed, and that's all. Then we're going to talk about ranking right now, right? So, we went through the crawl process. Google scanned our website. They indexed our website into this database in order for it to be ranked, right? So how does ranking work? What's happening with ranking? What needs to happen for you to be successful at ranking at a really high level on the first page on Google? Okay, so let's get into it. How do search engines ensure that when someone types a query into the search bar, they get relevant results in return? How does that happen? That process is known as ranking, or the ordering of search results by most relevant to least relevant in a particular query, right? So, like I said, Google only is going to show the very best websites. That means you need to be VIP. Your website needs to be in tip-top shape to be able to deliver successful content and results to people that search for the things that you want and you offer. Okay, so to determine how VIP you are, search engines use an algorithm. It's a process or a formula by which stored information is retrieved and ordered in a meaningful way. So, like I said, with the club analogy, Google's looking you up and down. They're seeing who your friends are. They're seeing who's talking about you. They're seeing what value that you actually offer to the people within the club, right? And they need to make sure that your everything is tight. Do you have a good appearance? Do people talk about you? Do you actually provide value and make people feel good when they land on your website, right? So these are all things, obviously, that you need to understand to get into a club like Story in Miami or something like that. It's the same exact way on a search engine. So if you want to be VIP, you got to make sure that all these things for you in tip-top shape. Luckily, SEO is, I would say it's easier getting in than, walking in by yourself at Story, but that's exactly how Google works. They just want to make sure that you're VIP for these search results that they're providing people. So Google makes changes to this algorithm every day, right? Some minor, some major, such as core algorithm updates used to address specific issues, like the Penguin update to attack link spam. So, about 10 years ago, Google updated their algorithm to attack link farms and make sure that they weren't getting any play because they were really manipulating the search engine to show them. And so overall, Google's always making changes to these algorithms. They say that they're making it better and more relevant to the user, right? So that's why when you type in certain stuff, you'll get one result, and then your friend in another state or something like that can type in the same thing and get a whole nother result, right? They're constantly making changes to the algorithm, and they're providing search results based on you. Okay, where you're at, type of things you look for, type of things you might be interested in, things like that. So that's how it works, right? So let's talk a little bit more about what search engines want when it comes to ranking, right? So search engines continue to want to do the same thing, to provide useful answers to users' questions in the most helpful formats. Okay. One of the things that they want to, address is links. When I say links, I mean two things: backlinking and an internal link. So a backlink is when a link from site A points to your site, which is site B. Think of it like a referral. An internal link is a URL on your site that links to a URL on your site. So if you have like a navigation menu, that's an internal link system where you're linking all the other pages on your website in one place. That way, whenever people need to find other pages, they can simply do that by using your navigation. And crawlers use the same thing for you as well. So that's why, all the sites that are in your menu are usually the sites that get ranked on Google. Yeah, that's how it works. So this is how search engines determine which URLs are more trustworthy. The more natural backlinks that you have from trusted websites, the better your odds are to rank higher within search, right? So if a lot of people are talking about you and you're saying, hey, this is a quality website, then Google's going to take that into consideration when it's time to rank somebody on the first page. So the more backlinks that you have, the more sites that you have talking about you in the form of a link is very beneficial for you in SEO. Okay. The next thing is content, right? So once Google understands that, you have a good reputation with all the other websites that they find reputable, they're going to look at the actual value that you have to provide. So that is in your content. Links would be useless if they didn't have anything to point to. That's something that's content. Content can be videos, images, and text, especially text. SEO is heavily text-based, heavily text-based. A video is not going to get you ranking well. An image is not really going to get you ranking well. It's all about the text. It's all about, the textual content. Okay. So when someone searches, there are literally thousands of possible results. So how do search engines know what the user is going to find valuable? A big part of where you rank is based on how well the given query matches the content. Does the page match the words that were searched? Are you talking about things that people are talking about? And that's the biggest thing when it comes to marketing is that, you have your agenda and somebody else has their own agenda, and you need to learn how to harmonize with whatever it is that they're looking for. That way you can provide effective solutions within your market, right? So because of this focus on user expectation and accomplishment, there is no strict rules for how long your content should be, on keyword consistency, or what you put in header tags. All those matter when it comes to effective keyword optimization, but the focus is still on users who will read the content. Remember that, because I'm going to show you exactly how you optimize content for effective keyword optimization, which is a vital strategy in SEO. However, we want to make sure that we're, creating content that people care about, and we're answering the questions that they need answered, for whatever our product or service is providing. Whether you're local or national, it's the same concept. You gotta get on the same page with your users and understand what they're thinking in order for you to be successful. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about real quick is RankBrain. RankBrain is a machine learning robot AI sort of thing that Google has within their algorithm, right? And it's a program that continues to improve search rankings. So search rankings are constantly changing and being updated. And they do this by, watching over search results and making changes to them based on engagement metrics. So, for example, if RankBrain notices that a lower ranking search result is providing a better experience and result to users than a higher ranking search result, you can bet that RankBrain is going to adjust those results and move the better result, that the higher engaging result, and demote their lesser engaging result, right? So Google's constantly changing search results based on, how many people are clicking on your organic search result link, okay? Because Google will keep leveraging RankBrain to promote the most relevant, helpful content, which makes sense. They got a bouncer at the door that's constantly moving people in, moving people out, making sure that they stay at the level that they are by ensuring that the content that's being provided to users is providing solutions to their users, right? So that's why you don't use Yahoo. That's why you don't use Bing, is because Google has become really effective at always scanning the entire internet and making sure that every day they're showing the very best content for specific query searches, right? So, like I said, Google's going to keep using RankBrain to promote, the best content. We need to focus as SEO people or SEO optimizations we need to focus on fulfilling searcher intent more than ever before. That's why you got to understand what people are thinking when it comes to your product or service. You got to know what they want. You got to know what they want to hear. You got to know all their most important questions and be able to answer that successfully on your website. And that's what gets you, where you need to be on the first page, right? So it's about providing the best possible information and experience for searchers. That's all it's about. Making sure that they can easily access your website on any device smoothly, right? Making sure your website loads quickly. Making sure that, the pages on your website answers the most relevant questions that users has. I don't care if you cut hair. I don't care if you install security cameras. I don't care if you mount TVs. I don't care if you work in construction or whatever it is. Like, when people land on your website, you got to make sure that your market has all of their questions answered in the form of helpful content, right? That's why people have blogs. Blogs are huge when it comes to content marketing because they go deep and they answer specific questions users might have about your product or service. So keep that in mind. All right. And then engagement metrics. When I talk about RankBrain and them watching the search results and making sure that, they're always showing the very best, the very best websites, they got metrics for this, right? So when like I said, like Google is tracking everything. Google tracks everything and everybody. And at this point, it is what it is. You just got to live with it. They track everything. So metrics are really important to them. So when I say engagement metrics, I mean data that represents how searchers interact with your website from search results. Okay, so this is what I mean. They're watching all this right here. Every time somebody clicks, every time somebody goes back to the search, and every time somebody does this, right, they click onto the thing, it's taking mad long. It's taking mad long to load, and they're going back to the website. They're paying attention to every time you do stuff like that. They're paying attention to where you click. They're paying attention to how long you're on that website. They're paying attention to all this stuff. So let me show you exactly what they're paying attention to, okay? They're paying attention to how many times people click, like how many times people visit your website. They pay attention to how much time people are spending on your website, before leaving it. Because when you think about it, if somebody's not spending a lot of time on your website, they likely didn't find what they're looking for, right? Depending on how your website's set up. If they're spending 5-10 minutes on your website, then that looks like a website that somebody wanted to stay on and they really enjoyed their experience there, right? And so you want to make sure that your website's a site where, people are getting everything that they need. Now, if your website, if people are, it doesn't exactly, just because people aren't spending a ton of time on your website, doesn't mean you have a bad website. It simply means if people are landing on the website, then bouncing off of it immediately, that's not a good look. But if it takes about a minute or two, which you can see this data through Google Analytics, if it takes about a minute or two on average, people that are on your website, then sometimes that's okay because people make decisions quickly based on what they see, right? And so, time on the page definitely matters, but we mean it in the context of people not bouncing off immediately because of, them not finding what they want. Okay, so keep that in mind. Then they watch the bounce rate, the percentage of all website sessions where users viewed only one page, right? So if people land on your website and then they don't take any further action on your website and they leave, that's called a bounce rate, right? Because typically what happens if somebody enjoys the page that they landed on, they'll click on other pages on the website. I'm sure you've done this. You click on the contact page, you click on, more services, you check out the home page, all this other stuff. You go through the website because you're enjoying the experience that you're having, making sure that, you're properly informed. And so, if somebody's hopping on one page and hopping right off, then that, that's probably that person didn't find what they were looking for. So, they pay attention to stuff like that. And then they pay attention to something called pogo sticking. where somebody clicks on an organic result and quickly returns back to the search engine results page, like I just did, where I clicked on a search result and then I immediately went back, right? Immediately, not like after 15 seconds, 30 seconds, immediately. Okay, so they're paying attention to this type of behavior because that's what lets them know that this is a high quality website based on how the user behaviors. So that's why this is such an important ranking factor as far as engagement goes. Outside of what's happening on your website with your content, they pay attention to how people move within it. Okay. And the next thing you want to know about Google is obviously the local search, like the local business listings and the maps listing. This is another sector of successful SEO, especially if you have a local business that you want more exposure for. You got to make sure that you got all your business listings, especially your Google My Business listing, okay? Because they show these search results, based on a bunch of different things. Like just like I just showed you here, as soon as I type in Barbershop Atlanta, I get the local results, right? Then I get the organic search results, right? So you want to make sure that you want to make sure that you're here, and also you want to make sure that you're here. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. Okay, so there's local search. They got a bunch of different ways on how they rank people for maps results. Is distance, right? Obviously, they want to show you the results that are closest around you. That's the whole point of the maps listing. And so if somebody's far away, you're not going to show up as a maps listing. It is what it is. If they're within, a 5-10 mile proximity of you, then there's a good chance that you'll show up there, right? The next thing is prominence. Google rewards businesses that are well known in the real world, right? So if you have a lot of reviews, if people are talking well about you, Google's going to show that a lot. Like look at these barbershops, 209 reviews, 88 reviews, 857 reviews. Google's like, oh snap, this listing is prominent. They got 4.9 stars on average, and they got 850 reviews. I'm going to show this more because this seems like it's relevant to a user search, especially if I'm looking for a barbershop, right? So they're going to show that. They're going to show the prominence. The next is the relevance, is how well a local business matches what the searcher is looking for. Like if you don't have your categories figured out on your maps listing, you can see how all these tags say barbershop. That's essentially what they're talking about. They're not going to show a nail salon. They're not going to show a hair salon, right? They're going to show a barbershop because that's what I typed in, right? So if this said nail salon, this probably wouldn't come up. If this said hair salon, this probably wouldn't come up. So you need to make sure that you're within the proper category, and that's also a keyword here within the name. Okay, so that's what they mean by relevant. So if you have those things, if you're near a user, if you got a lot of reviews, people talk well about you, and you're also relevant to what they're looking for, then you're going to show up on the maps listing as well. That's what it comes down to. Okay, perfect. And so next thing I quickly want to go through with you is talking about these ranking factors, right? So overall, there are 200 ranking factors, right? And this guy, Brian Dean, came up with this list, and he's like, hey, here's what I think all the 200 ranking factors are. No one understands the algorithm forward and back at all. Like not even people that work at Google. It's a very mysterious algorithm and how everything works. But, there's a lot of ranking factors, and this guy's going to try and drop all of that to us right here, right? So there's a lot of factors. Obviously, 200 is a lot. I'm going to skip all that. I'm not going through all 200, but I want to show you exactly where these factors lie, okay? So I'm going to scroll through this here, and I'll send a link out for this if you would like to read this in depth. But to summarize, here's the most important ranking factors in 2020. Referring domains, that simply means websites that link back to you, right? And then it's organic click-through rate, meaning, like I just said before, with RankBrain, how many people are clicking on your website and staying on it and going to other pages on your website. Those engagement metrics are a huge ranking factor, right? Then is domain authority. Domain authority is simply your social proof. It's your status. Is how many reputable websites are talking about you. Is it a lot? Is it a little? that all goes back to your website's domain authority, your overall, your .com. How authoritative is this domain in the overall space of websites? Then there's mobile usability. That's simply understood. Is it easily used on a smartphone? Can you use it on a tablet? Is it smooth? Is everything, where it needs to be? Is everything aligned? There's none like, you've seen some websites on mobile, on tablets where it's just hard to use. Everything's all over the place and things are broken. Like it doesn't make sense. So you got to make sure that your website can be used on multiple devices, not just your desktop. Dwell time, that's the load speed. How long does it take for your website to load? Dwell times essentially means how long is it dwelling before it actually, reaches the page. Okay. The next thing is total number of backlinks. I know you think I just said that, but I did not. So I'm gonna tell you they're both the same thing, but they're a little bit different. Referring domains is how many actual websites, unique websites, talked about you, right? How many of these do you have linking back to your website, right? And then the total number of backlinks is the total number of how many times these referring domains have sent you a link. So if they have, multiple pages that link back to you, that adds to the total number of backlinks, but it still is only one referring domain because this right here has to be unique. Okay, so very similar things, but they're just different. Referring domains is how many of these unique websites or these unique domain names link back to you, and then the total number of backlinks is the literal number of times that each domain has done that for you. Okay. The next is content quality. Like I just mentioned, you got to know what your user wants to hear. You got to know what they're thinking. You got to know what questions that they're asking and be able to deliver that value successfully to them each and every time. Okay. Then it's on-page SEO, and that overall has to do with keyword optimization. That has to do with making sure that you have good meta titles and meta descriptions. Meta titles and meta descriptions, like I said before, is literally this. This is the title, this is description. You got to make sure that those are keyword relevant and they offer good information to people and make them want to click back to your website, right? So there it is. And copy, that's exactly how you're successful in SEO. That's exactly how search engines work. You just got to make sure that your website is really easy to use on all devices. It loads quickly. You got to have great content answering people's questions, and then you got to make sure that other websites are talking about you. Okay, and like I mentioned in previous videos, you do this through filling out all of your business listings and making sure that your website is linked on those listings back to your website, and also getting local publications to talk about you, local bloggers, whatever. If you got a restaurant, obviously you want the local food blogs to talk about you and link back to your website. You want all those things popping for you at the same time. Okay. I will see you guys in the next section. Next, we're going to talk about keyword research and exactly how that's done. And then we'll move on from there. Okay. Thank you. I will see you guys soon.